When a racist slur was thrown at Derrick in a crowded coffee shop, no one expected his calm but powerful response, one that would leave the room speechless and change everyone inside forever. The sun had just begun to rise over the quiet streets of Cincinnati as Derrick walked into the Bean Counter Café, a local favorite known for its rich coffee and quirky decorations. The air buzzed with casual conversation as people sipped their drinks, nibbled on pastries, and scrolled through their phones. For Derrick, it was just another Tuesday, an early meeting to prepare for, but not before grabbing his usual black coffee. The line was short, only 6 or 7 people deep, and Derrick took his place near the back. He pulled out his phone to check emails, mentally planning his day. The soft jingle of the door opening barely caught his attention, until she walked in. A woman in her mid-40s with sharp features and an impatient energy scanned the room like she was already irritated. Her heels clicked loudly as she stepped into line behind him. Derrick didn't think much of it. Mornings made people grumpy, especially before caffeine. But then she let out an annoyed sigh and muttered something under her breath. He ignored it, keeping his eyes on his phone until her whispers turned into words just loud enough to hear. "Unbelievable," she hissed. "Some people have no manners." Derrick glanced back, unsure if she meant him or was just complaining to herself. Her glare told him everything. He raised an eyebrow but stayed silent, turning back to his emails. He'd dealt with this before, those quiet, biting comments that weren't quite loud enough to challenge. But something in her tone put him on edge. As the line moved, Derrick stepped forward, leaving the usual space behind him. Then it happened. "Excuse me," her voice cut through the cafe, sharp and accusing. "You just cut in front of me!" Derrick froze, caught off guard. He turned fully toward her, keeping his voice calm. "I've been in line since I walked in." Her face twisted. "No, you weren't. I've been standing here, and you just pushed ahead like you owned the place." The cafe grew quieter as people turned to watch. Derrick felt their stares, some curious, some uneasy. The barista hesitated, unsure whether to step in. Derrick stayed steady, his posture relaxed but firm. "I didn't cut in line." She crossed her arms, her voice rising. "Of course you'd say that. People like you always think the rules don't apply." The air turned heavy. Every customer was watching now, the tension thick. Then she took a step closer, her finger jabbing toward his chest. "I know your type," she spat. "Always trying to take what isn't yours, cutting lines, breaking rules. Typical." The word typical hit like a slap. A couple by the window exchanged nervous glances. The barista's hand hovered near the phone, ready to call for help. Derrick kept his voice steady. "I don't know what you mean by my type, but I'm not here to argue. I waited in line like everyone else." Her face flushed red. For a second, it seemed she might back down, but then, trembling with rage, she said the word that froze the entire cafe. "You people think you can do whatever you want. Well, not here, not today." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Cups clinked nervously. Patrons stared in shock. Even the woman seemed briefly stunned by her own cruelty, though she quickly covered it with a defiant glare. Derrick's chest tightened, but he didn't flinch. He wouldn't give her the reaction she wanted. She probably wanted him to explode, to shout, to curse, to prove whatever ugly story she'd made up about him in her head. But instead, Derrick closed his eyes for just a second, steadying himself. A man in his early 30s, sitting nearby, was the first to break the silence. "Hey lady, what the hell is wrong with you?" His voice was thick with disgust. "Yeah, that's way out of line," someone else added, a woman a few feet away. A wave of murmurs spread through the cafe. People shook their heads, whispering, but instead of backing down, the woman only got angrier. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," she snapped. Someone had to say it. Derrick finally spoke, his voice calm but sharp. And you thought it should be you. She blinked, caught off guard. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Derrick said, you just showed everyone here exactly who you are. He gestured around the room, his words clear and deliberate. Look at their faces. You didn't say what they were thinking, you said what you were thinking. And now they know. His words hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. But this wasn't the end. What Derrick said next would change everything, leaving even her speechless. His voice was quiet but strong, speaking not just to her, but to the whole room. Do you even know what that word means to someone like me? What it carries? It's not just a slur, it's a reminder of pain, of struggle, of everything people who look like me have survived, and still we keep going, heads high. The cafe was dead silent. Even the espresso machine seemed to pause. Every eye was locked on Derrick as he stood there, calm but unbreakable. He turned back to the woman, his voice firm but not cruel. You think you're putting me in my place? Number, you're just showing everyone where you've chosen to stand, on the wrong side of decency, the wrong side of humanity. The woman opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time, her anger flickered, replaced by something like doubt. Derrick didn't wait. He gestured to the crowd. These people? They're witnesses, not just to your hate, but to what I do next. And I choose not to match your hate with mine, because that's not who I am. I've lived too much to let someone like you decide how I react. A quiet murmur of agreement spread through the room. The man who'd spoken earlier nodded, his face full of respect. The barista stepped out from behind the counter, her jaw set. Sir, she said to Derrick, your coffee's on the house. Then turning to the woman, and you need to leave. The woman's face burned red. I'm not going anywhere, she hissed, but her voice had lost its bite. Derrick held up a hand. Let her stay, he said. Let her hear this. He looked at her again, his tone softer, but still unshakable. I don't know what brought you here, what hurt or fear made you think this was okay, but I hope you think about today, because whether you see it or not, you've left a mark on everyone in this room, and it's not the one you wanted. The woman's mouth opened, then shut. Her eyes darted around, meeting nothing but disapproval. Slowly, she stepped back. Her defiance crumbled, and without another word, she turned and walked out. Then it started. One person near the counter began clapping, then another, then another. Soon the entire cafe was applauding, not for her leaving, for him, for the quiet strength he'd shown. The sound of hands coming together filled the room, a shared moment of respect. But as the door swung shut behind the woman, Derrick wasn't done. He turned back to the crowd, leaving them with words they wouldn't forget. As the applause faded, Derrick looked around, meeting the eyes of the people who had watched it all unfold. Some looked amazed, others thoughtful, a few even guilty. He waited for the silence to settle before speaking. I didn't come here to make a scene, he said, his voice steady. But we all need to realize something. Hate doesn't grow on its own. It feeds on silence, on people looking the other way. Moments like this, they're not just about me standing up for myself. They're about all of us deciding what kind of world we want to live in. The barista nodded, arms crossed over her apron. You're right, she said. And I'm sorry that happened here. Derrick gave her a small smile. This isn't about your cafe. It's about what we do next. How we act, not just today, but the next time we see something wrong. A young woman near the window raised her hand like she was in class. I just want to say thank you, she stammered. I don't think I could have stayed that calm. Derrick's smile grew. Being brave isn't about not feeling angry. It's about choosing what to do with that anger, and we all get that choice. The man who had spoken up earlier nodded. You made the right one. That took real strength, man. The mood in the cafe had changed. The tension was gone, replaced by something warmer, like strangers realizing they weren't so different after all. People started talking, sharing stories of times they'd stood up, or times they wished they had. As Derrick grabbed his coffee to leave, the barista handed him a second cup. "For the road," she said with a wink. "And for being the kind of person this world needs more of." Derrick chuckled. "Thanks, but remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about showing up when it counts." Stepping outside, the morning sun felt brighter, the air lighter. But what had happened in that cafe wouldn't fade so easily. Not for him, and not for the people inside. Derrick paused, taking a deep breath. The fight had been ugly, but he felt no regret. Just clarity. He knew moments like this weren't just about him. They were about the ripples they created, the way they made people think, question, maybe even change. Looking down at the warm coffee in his hand, he remembered his grandmother's words. Kindness isn't weakness, it's power, because it takes strength to choose it. Those words had guided him his whole life. Today, they'd guided him again. Catching his reflection in the cafe window, he thought about the woman, her anger, her ignorance, the hurt she must carry to lash out like that. He wasn't foolish enough to think he'd changed her, but maybe, just maybe, he'd planted a seed. Inside, the conversations continued, buzzing with a new energy. Derrick couldn't hear them, but he didn't need to. He knew this story would travel. It would make some people braver, make others think harder. That was the thing about moments like this. Change didn't always need a grand speech or a protest. Sometimes it just took one person standing tall, refusing to bend. With one last look at the cafe, Derrick smiled. He didn't need to stay to see the impact. He'd done what he came to do, stand firm, speak true, and remind everyone, including himself, that dignity isn't something you lose. It's something you choose to keep.